Indigenous Screen Office, Bureau de l'écran total, that play now a role, very, very important role in the production and the development of in the indigenous cinema in Canada. It's incredible. I think we have, I don't know, more than 30 feature films this year in the festival. And I remember 25 years ago, to have one was a challenge. So there has been a lot of progress. And now this organization, the Indigenous Screen Office, is there to give an impulse even stronger to that movement of the creation of an indigenous cinema. So I will let you in good hands, Jean-François Bonsawin, with Paramontour, and follow all the activities of the festival. There is a lot to see and a lot to hear. Thank you.
Kwai, I'm pretty happy to be here again with the Indigenous Screen Office to present masterclasses at the festival. The masterclasses offers opportunities to meet with filmmakers and to discover insights of their work, and also allowed us to find out more of what it is to be an Indigenous storytellers. I'm Jean-François Obam-Sawin, the Director of Communication and Francophone Initiative at the Indigenous Screen Office. The Indigenous Screen Office is an Indigenous-led organization dedicated to support Indigenous creators and strengthening Indigenous storytelling and narrative sovereignty across Canada's screen-based industry. And today, I'm with Courtney Montour, who's an Indigenous filmmaker based out of Montreal. Should I read your bio, or should you ask you to tell you who you are, Courtney?
Sure, I can talk about who I am. Yeah, sure.
So please tell me who you are, Courtney.
So I'm Courtney Montour. I'm from Ganawage, and I primarily work in documentary as a writer and director. And I've been in the field for about 18 years now. And I just love being able to share these stories and working within Indigenous storytelling.
Okay, some project that you worked on, Courtney.
Yeah.
Tell me some titles that you were involved with in the last few years.
Yeah. In the last few years, Married to X Early, I Am Indian Again, which was produced by the National Film Board of Canada. The Knowing, documentary series with Tanya Talaga, based on her book. And most recently, Rising Through the Fray, which is also with CBC Doc Channel and Niche Media. And that film is now out on CBC Gem in Canada, but also playing at this festival and still doing the festival run as well.
Yes, wow. Well, thank you. You have like a nice list of projects that you've been involved in. So before we dive in each of these projects, let's start with my first question. How do you make your mark as an emerging director years ago? How did you find your place in this industry? How do you do this?
Mm-hmm. It's a story. I didn't know I was going to be a filmmaker. My background when I went to school was in journalism, and I didn't gravitate toward it. I felt it was too quick of a transaction with the people whose stories you were sharing, and so I wasn't sure what I wanted to continue on in. And someone recommended to try out as a stage at Mushkeg Media, which was here in Montreal at the time. Paul Rickard from Moose Factory was producing and directing there, and his work partner, producer George Hargrave. And they actually supported a lot of Indigenous talents that we are now seeing out there today. So that's where I got my start, walking in there and saying, I don't really I don't have a background in knowledge and filmmaking as a whole, but they allowed me to do everything hands-on. And I think that's such important in that mentorship, that we give Indigenous people who have an interest the opportunity to try everything. And that's what I did. They brought me out on shoots right away, and I was a PA. I was a sound recordist on some of their productions. I got to try different things, and it really stuck with me. And being able to see, I guess, a different way of connecting with Indigenous communities, and the care that Paul and George brought into the stories and the series that they were making, excited me about wanting to direct, and realizing there was a way to do this that wasn't just transactional and a one-time thing, and then you leave that community. So it showed me a way that we could do things differently.
So I can say that at that moment that you said, okay, now among all of these different roles, I want to be a storyteller. I want to be a director, correct?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah. They gave you that opportunity to start out. Back then it was Mohawk Ironworkers was the series. So that was with several communities, Ganawage, Aguazasane, Ganasatage, and getting to travel and direct, and again, share this cultural experience, and this pride was, to me, really powerful.
how do you identify your opportunities? Because I know you long enough, because I worked at EPTN in the past, and I've been around for long enough to know that you select your projects. How do you select projects that you want to work on?
Yeah. I can say I've also been fortunate along the way with the different producers I've worked with. If I'm working on series, that they kind of allow me to choose the stories within those series that I'm going to focus on.
Right.
And many times, like, my focus is on women's stories, two-spirit stories, and also stories of identity. To me, that's what really grounds my work. And I think it's our identity as Indigenous peoples is always called into question, and there's all these systemic barriers that have caused these ruptures in our connection to our language, our land, our communities. And so that's what I focus on, and I want to bring that to light in hopeful ways. Sometimes they're difficult stories, but to work on those stories with communities. And that's really what led me to the Mary Tuak's early story as well. She's always been a huge role model of mine, and to have that opportunity to shine a light on her story to a new generation as well, to me was really important, to show, again, a woman who helped change the Indian Act and status and the sex discrimination against Indigenous women who married non-Indigenous men. I see those stories across the country when I'm traveling and I meet people, how they've been impacted by issues like that.
How, as a filmmaker, as a director, you create or even build relationships with protagonists, with colleagues, to make your projects alive? How do you do? You wake up in the morning and say, okay, I'm going to take the phone and then talk to people. You build long-term relationship. How do you work that to make sure that these story comes to you?
Yeah, it's time. Like,
Mhm.
that's honestly, it's something you just can't rush. And I think we have to be mindful of that in this industry, because there's deadlines and these budgets, but we have to root it in taking care of the individuals who are a part of the project, the protagonists, and also the crew and everyone surrounded in the project. And I think one of the first things about that is finding people that will support you, finding that production company that truly believes in the project and shares in your values. Like that's key, because sometimes maybe there's a few production companies that are really interested in the project, but sitting down to have those conversations, getting to know each other is going to make all of that grow so much stronger. And that's the same way I feel about the crews that I work with, bringing them on to every shoot, not just hiring someone like on a one-off, trying to keep everyone involved throughout the project, because then they're invested and they're excited. And that also then translates into the relationship that they have with the protagonists, and everyone ends up feeling more comfortable. And the sharing of ideas. I love that. I'm more about like, let's all collaborate and share ideas. I love to hear what they're thinking as well, like all of my collaborators.
And you work with indigenous creative team and non-indigenous creative team. How do you work with these two different group of people? How do you create the connection between themselves for the benefit of your projects?
Yeah. Again, I've been fortunate. I mean, maybe there were some, times early on when early days, like again, talking 15 plus years ago, maybe when crew was just, put with me. I guess it was a learning that sometimes I was like, oh, I didn't necessarily like how some of those non-Indigenous people reacted, when we're in a documentary setting, or perhaps how they were rushing something. And so picking up these key little things, as as I learned more throughout my career, helped me to select when I'm working with non-Indigenous creatives. I always work with people, again, who value human beings and connections. I think that's like the baseline. So then you can spend more time creating and thinking about the individuals for rising through the fray. For example, my director of photography, Kristen Brown, lists and thinking about what that can look like when we're with those different participants in that situation. But I also sit with everyone on the crew and share the background of the stories that we're going to be talking about. So with Rising Through the Fray, it's set against the backdrop of roller derby and the first borderless team in the sport, which is all Indigenous women from around the world who came together, rather than normally you have to be on a country, a state, or a province. So it's a groundbreaking thing they're doing. But also the stories that I focused on were 3 individuals who have different stories of separation, disconnection from their communities. And I also made sure that that was all talked about with the crew beforehand, that they also knew the background of all their stories before we went into any situation filming with anybody.
Thanks for that. That's pretty. Isn't it an additional duty for you as an indigenous filmmaker to do that? Would you feel that if you wouldn't be an indigenous filmmaker, you wouldn't have that responsibilities? Do you feel this is like a necessity for you to bring this to the team, that lens when you shoot?
I think, again, it goes back to human connection, dignity, and respect that are values for many Indigenous people, but that need to just be shared across the film industry.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Let's talk about Married to Acts Early. I'm an Indian again, because the story itself is powerful. It's available online on the National Film Board website. This project is quite an important project that you worked on, but also the behind the scene of this project is also quite fascinating. Can you tell us more about how this project came to you?
Yeah. So as I was mentioning, Married to Acts Early, an absolute role model for me, because she's from my community. And as being someone who was an integral part of changing the Indian Act and that sex discrimination impacting our women and children having to leave their communities. And I was actually working on another project, Flat Rocks, which is about the impact of the St. Lawrence Seaway on Ganawage. And I was working on that with Roxanne Whitebean from Ganawage. And while we were on that project, Alanisa Bomswin was our mentor for the project. And it was, absolutely amazing to, to have that support from her. And at the time, Alanis mentioned that she had audio recordings of Mary from 1984, but that she had never used them. And there's a backstory to that. Like, another one of Mary's friends at the time was going to make a documentary. So Alanis stepped back and said, let the person who, is closer in that circle to go ahead. And for whatever reason, it did not. So she had these amazing audio recordings, and she offered them to me, and I had immediately said yes because of the importance of the story to me. I think that's key as creators, as filmmakers as well, to think about your role in that story, why you want to tell it, what are you bringing to that story, are you the right person to tell it, and will you love this story 5 years from now? I think is another really important thing. You'll be working on most of these projects, you'll be working on it for many years. So right away for me, everything came together that this was a story that I wanted to help get out there to a larger audience. And so that was the backbone of the Mary 2X early film, were these amazing audio recordings, so that it's really Mary telling her own story, and then filming in Ganawage with Mary's children, and in Edmonton with some of the folk and the other elders that Mary worked with, Nellie Carlson. There was a lot of care all along the way. And again, I worked very slowly on it. And I had the support of an amazing producer at the NFB at the time, Kat Ballou, who also believed in that process of slowing things down and about thinking about the long-term project and beyond from the beginning. And I think that's really important because, again, we rush to get the funding. We rush to think, okay, just development, but we don't think about, to always think about what happens later on and what happens when it comes out and how does that impact the individuals in the film. So we really took our time thinking about all of that, and allowing everyone to see the rough cuts before it was done to give feedback is a really important part, I think, that we can all do as filmmakers, to help those protagonists, the participants, feel included and have a say in their story that's going to go out there in the world. That's really key.
How many hours of recording did you listen to?
For that, there was about 6 or 7 hours from 1984. Mm-hmm.
And okay, my question, it is easy. How it is to work with Alanis? How did she build the trust with Alanis at that time? Did you know her before? Did you work with her before, other than helping you on the project on the St. Lawrence River? How the connections was created?
No, other than, always seeing her from afar and being like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing, prolific person, that's just the fact that many of us wouldn't be where we are today without Alanis, working so hard to get Indigenous stories out there at a time when nobody wanted to hear it, and when there wasn't funding, you had to fund your own way. So Roxanne Whitebean and I were very fortunate to have her come on as a mentor for our Flat Rock short. And that's when we got to spend more time together. But she really supported the Mary 2X early film. She came to Ganawage the day that we were filming in Mary's home, which her daughter now lives there. So she came to spend some time with Mary's son and daughter, and Jodie Callahoo Stonehouse, who's in the film, and her daughter Isabella, who are from Edmonton. So again, taking time in the shoot day to all be together and sit down for some tea and just break, I think is important. Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, for Alanis, she was there anytime I needed. She helped coach me on the French language version of the film when we recorded here at the studio. So she was really, really supportive.
So, do you maintain a relationship with Alanis since the movie was released?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Again, Alanis is just such an important person with what she shares and her values of storytelling. I think I always go back to what she says about, listening and how important that is, and the voice and recording, and not going in there with cameras at first. That's definitely all practices that I bring into my work as well now too. It's about building those relationships before you turn on a camera.
So then let's dive in and rising to the fray, which is you described the project, so I don't need to describe it again. It's going to be at the festival tonight. I think it's at 6:30 p.m. at Maison Développement Durable. What was your initial vision of this project when you decided to, because this is your latest baby, your latest project. You spent many years on developing and visioning this project. So what is your first pitch when you went to producers about this project?
Yeah. So again, what stood out to me was this all female indigenous team from around the world coming together, and for it being the first time. I mean, it's also bigger than roller derby. It's groundbreaking outside of the sport as well. And that feeling of like, more people need to know about this story. It is going to be something that is historical. Like, I want more people to know, because this is empowering and inspiring, and we need to see an uplifting story like this. And I love roller derby. Montreal has a fantastic roller derby community. So seeing Indigenous women holding their strength and that power in that space as well was something I really wanted to show. So my pitch, or my interest, was to follow, again, individuals to show the importance of Indigenous rising, like why this team needs to exist, why we need more spaces like this to exist, just in the world, in this country, and to find the players on the team who had those different stories of disconnection, to really be that vehicle to have the audience understand why Indigenous rising is so important. So that was really the pitch that started with Niche Media and Jason Brennan, and they hopped on board right away. But yes, this is my first feature documentary, but it took us longer than we thought for many reasons, COVID being our biggest challenge on this project.
As a filmmaker, and also for emerging filmmakers that are with us today, how comfortable are you with the pitching projects? Are you comfortable with this? How do you practice? Do you practice at home with friends? Because it's usually like a minute or two that you have to pitch an idea that can be kept or left. So tell me about how do you deal with the pitch part of the process? Are you comfortable with pitching?
No, I'm not one that's comfortable with it. Get a little better every year, but I think the most important thing is like your excitement about the project. You have to know this project, you have to believe in this project, and why those people that you want to film, why their story is so important, and why you're the one that should tell the story. So even if you're uncomfortable, like if your heart is there and that's what you believe in, that's going to come out. I think that's the most important thing.
So how this project, your initial idea, initial pitch, evolved to the film that we're going to see tonight?
Yeah. Yeah. So like I was saying, I have to bring up the COVID thing, because it really was something that struck this project hard because it wasn't one that we could keep filming. We, even to back up, one of the important parts that we did for this film was to spend time with the team before they came on board to want to be a part of the film. So Niche Media supported me in that, and to going visit the team when they were participating at RollerCon, which is a large convention in Vegas, and that was in 2018. And so went there without cameras to meet and to spend the weekend with all of them and start getting to know each other. And through that process, they then agreed, yes, we want to move forward with a documentary. And then we started filming, and 2019 was our first shoot, but then COVID, so we couldn't continue filming because it didn't make sense for the story, because we didn't know what was going to happen with the team. They really wanted to be able to continue, but it was a sport that was hit very hard because it's all self-funded. They can't quarantine. So the sport took a huge hiatus. So conversations over several years, a few questions by like our broadcaster CBC, like, so when are you going to start? When this is going to happen? And I was like, I believe in this story. I want it so very much that I'm like, Indigenous Rising story has to come to the screen. We can make this happen. We'll give it some time. And it worked. And it worked. So what changed over the years are some of the protagonists who are going to be a part of the story, because some people retired. They just, they retired over that 3-4 years. And so Sour Cherry, who's Soto Ojibwe, who lives in Edmonton, she is a part of the story, and she was always meant to be someone who was a part of the story. She went to the initial World Cup in Manchester in 2018, where the team came together. So it was wonderful to have that story be a part of it. And then our amazing two other teammates and protagonists, Crispy and Hawaiian Blaze, came on later. So I'd say one of the interesting things about restarting the project, once the team was ready to go in February 2023, we were with the team when they were in Louisiana for their first tournament, again, coming back together, also with new teammates on the team. And we were there filming with them in the parking lot as they met for the first time again since 2019. So we're alongside with them. But at the time, who those two other protagonists were going to be was not known when we started to reshoot. I had to give the team some time to decide and feel comfortable with the cameras, and a reminder of what we were doing there, and to just have everyone settle into that. And it was after that first reshoot and re-welcoming of everybody that that Crispy and Hawaiian Blaze, came forward as wanting to be some of the main participants of the film.
What about the crew? Do you have to make sacrifice on your team because of the COVID and the impact of COVID on your calendar? Would have the new schedule, so you have to make work with different team members, or you were able to keep most of them?
Yeah, our sound recordist, Gael Kumar, was able to still do the full thing, and she's absolutely amazing. And then the one shoot we did before COVID, that director of photography wasn't able to continue. So that's when Kristen Brown came on, who I was working with on some other series, and she came on for the whole project. So it was really amazing again to have this team all together, and that when Indigenous Rising saw us all together, again, they had that connection of, oh, we're working with the same team the whole time. And there's that comfort. And there's a certain point when they forget that they're wearing the mics, that's the dream you want, right?
So, and the film, your protagonists are really generous with you. How do you make this happen? Is that time? Is that your capacity to have them forget the mic and the camera around, or because you select them that way, or because they are ready to tell their stories on screen. Tell me more about that aspect because it's
Yeah.
crucial in the making of a feature film doc like you did to have them to share who they are and what they've been through in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a mixture of things. One thing for sure, they were again really receptive as a team to have another Indigenous woman be in this space and helping them share their story.
Yeah.
That was key. And all the time of talking outside of the space. So with the main protagonists, Our Cherry, Crispy, and Hawaiian Blaze, we would talk for hours over the 2.5 years that we actually filmed, after that. Talk about the kind of stories that they wanted to share. And again, it is very personal stories that they're sharing on screen, but working through that together so that there's no surprise questions coming in interviews. And when we are together, that we kind of we work through the plan of what that day is going to look like beforehand, and also what kind of things do you normally do. What are you up to? Sometimes the smallest detail. You're going to the store. You go to the store every day to get a coffee. Like it could be a really important thing. So just what do you do? What's your normal flow? When do you wake up? Like when are you active? I'm not going to say like, oh, we have to start at 8 a.m. if you're usually up and ready to go by noon. So working with when they feel good is also super, super important. Working around their schedules. And you can have the greatest list in the world. It's great to have like the A, B, and C wish list of everything, but also going with the flow of like how they're feeling that day is the most important thing. And if they want a little more time to get ready for their interview because that's making them feel good and making them comfortable, do that. I think that's important to not rush that process. Also, when you're filming, be like, if we can get more, that's something I would love to see in the industry. Shorter days for everyone, I think, just improves, the spirit of everyone around and checking in with everyone all the time.
How many days of shooting you have on this project, Courtney?
I would have to think back. It's about 28 total. And we shot in, again, cross borders in maybe 6 states as well. And then within Canada, there was quite a lot of movement going on. But it also mirrors the life of Indigenous Rising and the movement that they have to do as a team when they're going to compete somewhere.
Yes. Crossing the borders as a filmmakers, is that a challenge for you, or was just more documentation to be submitted to the U.S. borders, or how do you deal with that aspect, which is also a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of paperwork? What's something that you were prepared to face?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to have that learning curve with other projects, and Niche Media, helped support to get did all the paperwork to put everything together. And I was working with a crew who has that experience as well. So everything went relatively easy as it could. There's always confusion when crossing the border. With border agents, I think a lot of times there's documentation that you're required to have, carnets and all of this. But when you actually submit it, oftentimes the border agents don't know what to do with it. So be prepared for long waits for those kind of things. It's just, the paperwork, legality that you have to deal with across borders. But there's a lot of miscommunication on how you handle that when you're traveling. But we've gotten very good at how to pack things down for a plane, for vehicles. But we finished. We wrapped all of our cross-border filming in the end of 2024. So I think now would be a little bit different going over. I don't have that experience.
Yes.
But it's always a lot to keep in mind when you're traveling with that much gear.
And your crew, you were traveling with, how many people were traveling with you on a shoot?
4 people always,
Okay.
yeah. Our sound recordist, our DP, and a production assistant, and myself.
Okay. So then the project is created. So you have to jump to post production. And knowing most filmmakers, they have a lot of content to cut. How do you manage that part of recreating the story from all the content that you collected over the years, and to make it like to one story, one feature film?
Mhm.
How do you work? How was your process to make this happen?
Yeah. So I worked with an incredible editor, Kate Legault, who's based here in Montreal. And she's also a filmmaker herself. So having, I think, both those perspectives was really valuable. Um, and I love sitting in on the process as much as possible. So I kind of did that and sat with her most of the time, like let her do her own thing, but being in the same space so that if there's a question, I've got the answer right away. And I'm a crazy note taker. So I'm always, when I'm filming, I always have my monitor and I'm writing down every second of the day what is happening and highlighting certain things that I liked. So there's always an easy reference back as well. That's my process. But same thing, sitting down and speaking with her about um, who these 3 protagonists are. This is what the team's about. This is where we filmed. And the main thing I always said, like, it's not a sports documentary, right? That it's about these 3 individual people's stories and why the space Indigenous Rising needs to exist for representation, and always to connect their stories to that. So going with that information as she worked through the contents, that helped her. And because we had so much content coming in to her workspace, she ended up seeing many of the interviews first before getting to see like any of our actual verite footage. So she was grounded in their personal story first, which was also like an interesting thing. But again, getting into the editing room, I guess another little challenge to the story was because I only started with one main subject, and that's Sour Cherry, because the other 2 came in just after our first shoot. They were both there at the first shoot. Hawaiian Blaze and Crispy were there. Crispy was mic'd all the time because she is a coach. So we always had her audio, but they may not have been the full focus all the time. So Kate had to, look a little bit more about in the structure of where do I find them, because they're not necessarily the focus in that first shoot. So that added some layers to it. But the film is grounded in 3 separate tournaments and following the 3 individuals in their home lives. And I think what's special with all the pauses and challenges we had is that we get to see 3 inaugural tournaments where borderless teams are growing and being accepted. And again, that originated with Indigenous Rising, and getting to see their transformation, that we're seeing them starting off and trying to find their footing again, and how they relate to one another, and seeing that grow.
Thanks for sharing that, because I think this is important when for storytellers on screen to understand that part of the process, where yes, you're on the field, you are shooting, but then you need to create the storyline, and based on the content that you have, and then you shoot the doc, you do have a vision, but of course, you're gonna have to adapt on the reality of the protagonist and the stories that you have that has been created, and there are injuries that happens. There's many things that happens with your protagonist that you need to create, to deal with. So now there's 10 minutes left, Courtney. I want to talk about more about like sharing the films with them, the protagonists, with the community, and then with the public. Because that's another part was quite important. We do loves creating content, but we also quite important that people can appreciate it and see it to understand some of the challenges and the stories that are crucial to our people. So tell me, what is your process or protocols that you had post shooting, post production, and to present and to get the feedback of the team members, the team players?
Yeah. So again, sharing rough cuts with them,
Yep.
with each of the three main participants, the Indigenous Rising team management, and anybody else who was any other teammates that were featured in there as well, was really important. To me, that's always key. And of course, it's describing to them as well, because they might not be used to watching it in that way, that, okay, well, has it been color corrected yet? This is not going to be the final sound, but just please let me know, is this authentic? Is this accurate? And being available for a phone call immediately after to see, how they feel about seeing this and watching it. But everything went really well. There was one small change, like from one person who was saying something in their language, and they were like, "Oh, cut out this part because I stumbled on something and it doesn't sound right." So knowing that, was important. And then sharing it with the broader community. Each of the participants went to film festivals. I went with them. That was important for them to all have that experience, but also prepping them for it. Being in the film is one thing, then all of a sudden to see it on a large screen is another thing, and to get questions from the audience. We just talked through all those scenarios and what we could work with, or how I could take a question in case there was, what are the cues we can give each other if for some reason they need a break or a pause. What's the way to turn it to something that they really want to talk about, so that they feel grounded in that Q&A at a festival. And of course, there's just uncertainty about, oh my gosh, my story is going out there. Like, now it's like, there was definitely, this, like, I don't know, everyone's going to see it. And I'm like, but trust me, from the screenings we've been to, your story matters. It's important, and people are connecting with it, and they really want to hear from you. And that's what it's been like. It's been a really positive experience for all of them. And our community screening ended up being back at RollerCon in Las Vegas. Indigenous Rising decided they wanted to do the community screening for the largest roller derby population they could at one time. And that's where we decided to do it. And we also had some fantastic funding from Indigenous Screen Office that helped with our marketing distribution for theatrical, but also for this community screening. It was really powerful. I know they're still all thinking about it, to be in this space together in a proper movie theater with all three of the protagonists being in the Q&A together, because they've all done it separately with me, and now they were together. And they picked the moderator, who was somebody who was on their team. They chose the elder who was going to open, spending the time to meet together in person first, to have lunch together, to talk about how they wanted to approach the Q&A. Made that community screening so much more special. You could easily just have a moderator and just ask, generic questions about, how did you become involved with this? Why do you want to tell your story? But it was really reminding them, letting them know that this is your space, this is your community. What are the issues that the three of you want to talk about? What is the message the team wants to get out there? I'm just sitting here, and this is what's important, that it's structured about the things that you want to speak about. So it was emotional. I think it was also very intentional in what they all said in terms of helping to, again, structure and evolve the roller derby space for representation. I think that was really important, that the movie assisted and that community screening with continuing to challenge some of the norms or some of the microaggressions they may face, and they were able to publicly share that in that space, and that was really powerful for them.
So when you organize a screening like this, is it just a screening? Is there fees before? Is there like a cocktail after? Do you meet with them before for lunch, for dinner? How do you organize this type of event? Because for me, it's not just a screening. There's way more than a screening that you are to have it be involved with you and your production company. So can you tell a bit more about how you create this space?
Yeah. Again, to me, it's really important. Just like when we go back to filmmaking and the space that you're creating for them to be able to share, same thing happens there. It was about checking in with them the days leading up. When is everyone getting there? Just so that I know anything I can bring you, following up with them on the day, and organizing that lunch. That lunch was so important. We're all traveling from somewhere different, which is, again, a unique thing. It's not necessarily how community screening might happen, but for this, we're all coming from somewhere else. What's everyone's energy level? Let's have a meal together beforehand. It's not just let's show up at the venue. And then they felt so much more comfortable for that. And again, for a team like that, some of them hadn't seen each other in almost 2 years. Like Sour Cherry, it's been that long because of various, injuries and whatnot that had prevented her from playing. So it was a grounding moment to have a meal beforehand. And then afterwards, the whole team went out for a meal again. And it was wonderful to see new teammates that came on to Indigenous Rising, coming to the screening, coming out to this meal, getting to meet Sour Cherry, who has been on the team, for so long. So there was a lot of intergenerational knowledge sharing that went on through that whole time, and continuing to see each other, the next day. It will always continue, and I think that's a key thing that we can learn as a filmmaking community, is that relationship with the people that are in the films, those communities in those films. It doesn't end when the film goes out there in the world. There's a relationship that carries on, and taking care of each other, checking in over the years.
So, wow, thanks, Courtney. I always like to sit down with you because you share your passion through your work and being a witness as the audience. It's amazing. An advice that you will give to an emerging filmmakers that want to follow your path, what would that be?
Again, surround yourself with people with similar values. Go to events, like go to all the filmmaking events that you can, and reach out to other Indigenous folk, because there's many people out there who want to be able to support that next generation of voices. And so believing and connecting within those networks is so important.
So you see a change from 10 years ago in the industry for sure. Do you?
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Yes.
And it's amazing to see so many voices out there now, and the diversity in the works that are being created.
So, thanks again. Is there any questions that you like to share? Yes.
Thank you very much for the presentation or the conversation. And I've seen Screen Theory 2 acts early, and it's available on the ONF website. And also, I think I saw a preview that you gave of Rising Through the Fray, like you presented the film before it was completely edited. I believe
I may have.
Yeah, I remember it. So I remember you presenting But I really just returning to the film of Married to Actually, this is an incredible film. It's concise. It's 34 minutes. It's not a 1.5 hour documentary. I think that would be something different. And at the same time, I think the film really has a place on Quebec school curriculums and maybe Canadian school curriculums. And I wonder whether anyone is preparing that at the ONF, is doing the work to get that on a curriculum.
Yeah, that's a great question about Married to X Early, I Am Indian Again on school curriculums. So if you do go on the ONF NFB website, there is, I think it says education right at the bottom. Sometimes it's easy to miss if you just go to the regular page for the film. There is a link in both English and French under education to the school curriculum. And that also comes with 3 activities and back context and resources to use. And yes, I do know some individuals who are using it in their curriculum and are very thankful to have that educational guide that the film board had put together.
That's optional. I'm suggesting that it should be put placed on the curriculum. Means that it's not optional, that teachers must teach this material. You know, I'm saying I was going to ask your predecessor, Ellen Gabriel, does anyone work to put together? But she was mentioning that there's insufficient curriculum on Indigenous and Métis persons. I'm rephrasing what she said. It's going to be posted, so I'm going to hear the original statement. And I wanted to ask them if there was some time. It's like, is anyone put together the curriculum of what I'd like to see? Because it's one thing to advocate on behalf of curriculum reform in a vague way. It's another thing saying this, and showing a very precise set of elements. This should be on every Canadian or every Quebec student's curriculum, because the educational curriculum until primary and secondary are voted by provincial level. That this should be on every educated or informed person's curriculum, so that people know what the history of this city, of what this province, and what this country is, and who has created this country, who has created the rights of women, the rights of Indigenous women, but that really also means the rights of everyone in some way, in some vague way. I think so.
Well, again, there's so many great films out there now that can be used for educational curriculum. So I don't know if I'd want to leave it to, it has to be this film that needs to be shown. But I think it's wonderful that different organizations like ISO, NFB, there's different organizations across the country that do put out lists of, at different times of the year, these are the Indigenous films, that we suggest that you watch. And I think a lot of educators pick up from that and choose films based on that to integrate.
Thanks for that. So, thank you so much, Courtney, for your time today. Much appreciated. And I was almost tempted to ask what's next, but maybe what's next is to take some time off after the festival run. And I hope to see you soon on the stage.
Thank you.